Now, the Church of England has apologised after a report found it failed to protect children from sexual abuse from almost 400 members of the clergy over a period of some 80 years. The report accused the Church of being in direct conflict with its moral purpose and found it created a culture where abusers were, in fact, able to hide. Well, let's speak now to the Venerable Julie Conalty, Archdeacon of Tonbridge in the Diocese of Rochester, where she's lead there for safeguarding. Welcome to you, Julie. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I think this is something which the General Synod is going to take a look at soon, isn't it? I mean, obviously, I imagine they'll endorse the findings of this report, but practically, what does that mean?
Well, hopefully what it'll mean is a commitment to acting on the conclusions and the recommendations. Some of those recommendations will involve changes in policy, changes in church law, changes in our guidance. So all of that will have to go through our synod, and what we hope to see is a programme of action. At the moment, we have a very useful report. It's shedding light on things that we heard in the inquiry, that we've heard in previous Learned Lessons reviews and other inquiries. The key thing now is that we actually follow through on this and act.
The figures, 390 clergy convicted of abuse between the 1940s and 2018. I mean, you presume, don't you, that the vast bulk of that was happening in a previous era. I'm guessing that probably is true, that sense in which we all became much, not least because of what had happened to the Roman Catholic Church, that we all became, within a range of institutions, much more aware of the problems around safeguarding. Are you satisfied, even within your diocese, that you've got things right when it comes to making sure that vulnerable people are entirely safe?
No, I think that would be naive to think that we have got things right and that people are entirely safe. We know that sexual offenders will look for places where it is relatively easy to abuse. And that has been true of the Church. The Church has been a place that has not taken safeguarding seriously enough. We've been naive. There's been collusion. There's been poor practice. We've failed to listen to safeguarding professionals while we are working hard to improve. And we have seen improvements in our training, in the way we recruit volunteers and clergy, in the way we respond to allegations. While we've seen improvements, we've still got a long way to go. So I think it would be, I don't think I can agree that this is something of a previous age. We know from the numbers of sex offenders who are in prison or being supervised by probation that this is prevalent. This is not disappearing, this practice. And
we know also, don't we, that we know also, don't we, that a lot of the perpetrators are recidivists. And I wonder theologically whether there is a contradiction inherent in church teaching. I mean, you're familiar with grappling with this, aren't you? This sense that on the one hand, the injunction is always there within Christianity to look to forgive. And yet here are perpetrators, perhaps who may be drawn to a culture they see as perhaps being more forgiving, that then they feel somehow may almost provides them, in quotes, with a kind of licence to behave in the way they do. I mean, clearly that's not the licence they're being given, but I wonder whether you can just explore that apparent contradiction between forgiveness, which is at the heart of the Christian message, and the fact that these are people who very often will keep on committing offences no matter what you do to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say about forgiveness is it's linked to repentance, and repentance is about change of attitude and change of behaviour. So forgiveness is very closely linked to people who recognise they have done wrong and are wanting to change in their lives. You're right about recidivism, though. For many offenders, that true repentance isn't there or may not last because of their difficulties. And I think the part of the problem, though, is that within the church, we've had our very close attention paid to that forgiveness, that generosity, that love of God. And somehow we've lost sight of protecting the most vulnerable. We've lost sight of the pain that the survivors and victims have experienced. We've not listened to them. We've not paid attention to them. And it's become out of balance. I think safeguarding is at its best when we really are able to look at what's going on honestly, to hear from those who've been abused, and to put in place the safeguards that are needed to protect. So whilst we can welcome people into church who may be perpetrators, we need to ensure that there is adequate supervision and support for them. We need to ensure that we are not increasing the vulnerability of other people by inviting them in.
And just in 10 seconds, we're almost out of time, but when you look across the Atlantic and you see some of the big compensation claims that have actually bankrupted some of the big American dioceses, how worried are your colleagues in the church that this could be the beginning of a process that sees compensation that could damage, financially really damage what the church does?
To be honest, I think that is and should be secondary to the desire to make reparation. We've got a pilot project that we're starting that's looking at how we do that with some of the victims who feel that we have not dealt well with their claims, their cases, with their disclosure. And, you know, that I think that has to be our priority. It will have a financial impact. It should have a financial impact, because just words saying sorry are not enough.
Julie, got to leave it there. Julie Conalty, appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.